Hi, it's Amy. Today the thought I would like to share with you, I'm titling Silenced. We live in a world that's tried and is currently trying to erase who Jesus is, to erase that he existed or that he still exists. The world system and a man-made institutions try to create this perception of him that's not real. They brand lies and false teaching with his name. This is not a new phenomenon, nor is it a new circumstance. Since the time that Lucifer was kicked out of heaven, he made it his purpose to wipe away God's identity among men. He wants to destroy every living and written example of God's truth and God's existence. From Genesis, where he convinced Adam and Eve to eat the fruit and then hide from God, to the New Testament, where he tried to kill Jesus once and for all at the crucifixion. And I've looked and studying this out, and I can't find any place where the name of Jesus was mentioned or spoken between the time of his death and the time of his resurrection. Even the priests and the Pharisees referred to him as the deceiver in Matthew 27:63. I can imagine that those that followed him were probably worried about their own safety in saying his name or even talking about him. Satan, in his own mind, had thought he effectively wiped away any chance of salvation and hope by silencing who he was and using fear as a tactic to do that. And why is that? And that's because Satan knows he's unmatched in every way and cannot compete with who God is. He can't compete with how powerful God's name is. Satan knows that at the mention of Jesus' name, circumstances change and lives are turned around, and he loses his chance of taking others down with him. Satan is using mankind to try to erase Jesus' name from ever being mentioned. Unfortunately, throughout time, man has participated with him in rewriting history to get God's true, chosen church so focused on lies that we allow Jesus to be erased in our own lives, or we allow our perception of who Jesus is to be so distorted in our understanding of who he is that we accept things that just aren't true. It's a known fact that if a lie is repeated so many times, people will believe it as truth. So in distorting the truth, erasing God's existence from people's lives and trying to silence the name of Jesus, the enemy is trying to erase who he is. The question then becomes, how much are we, God's people, allowing him to be erased? How much do we permit his name being erased in your life and in my life? Do we trade our time with Jesus for other activities or people? Do we allow others to steal him and his time with us? Have you ever noticed how the adversary quietly sweeps in and brings discouragement? It doesn't seem when we're strong that it would be that easy to do, right? It doesn't seem like it would be that easy to bring us down and bring us to a place of discouragement. But all it takes is a few words that sound believable, that reminds us of who we once were, or tells us that we can't become who God has called us to become, reminds us of how unworthy we were of the blood and the name that Jesus has placed on us. Then what happens? Praying becomes difficult. We find other ways to fill our time, to distract our thoughts, and we drift even further away, allowing the enemy to quietly erase the existence of God's presence and name on our lives. I've been there. I've done that. I've got the t-shirt, because it's easy to allow ourselves, our minds, because we're flesh, to be affected by those thoughts, because our own mortality sees what we were before. We must protect our minds and lives from these attacks. Otherwise, we may distance ourselves from God. We must defend against these distractions. Otherwise, we allow God's presence and name to be subtly removed from our daily focus. Then we kind of look at ourselves and ask, how did we get this far away? We ask God, where are you? Then we're reminded that we're the ones who slid away, not him. Remember Deuteronomy 6, which gives God's expectation of how his people should live. We have the opportunity and liberty right now to take dominion in our daily lives and live in it. We must choose to mention God's name, to seek his face, and to visit the altar of prayer again and again. Remember, Satan has no power except what we give him. So today, do the opposite of what the world system teaches. Pray wherever you are, without ceasing, in faith believing. The fervent prayer of God's people accomplishes more than we can ever know. Today, choose to not let his name be silenced, but exalt his name in everything that you do. God bless.